Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Patrick and I were talking just as the broadcast was starting up. I heard the intro and I said, so I guess we're going on the air. We're talking about cars and car repairs and problems with cars. And you know what, class? It's really simple. You're going to have to learn about how to live with your car. You're going to have to learn how to diagnose problems with your car. And we were talking about a problem that he had, and he got a jump start that turned out to blow a fuse, and it caused problems that appeared to look like a bad starter, possibly even a bad alternator. Well, he's not alone. The reason I say that is because I got an email from one of our longtime class members, and she had a very similar experience where it looked like it was the alternator. It looked like it was the battery. And so, replace. And finally, after hundreds of dollars, it looks like it was a fuse. Now, how much does a fuse cost? Well, I looked it up on the internet last night after I got her email again, and it was $6.99 for her Volkswagen Passat, 2006 model, 6-cylinder engine. And, there are problems, and I just had one last night. I wanted to move my old Mercedes from one spot to another here on the farm, put the key in ignition, and it wouldn't start. And so naturally, I'm thinking, okay, obviously, someone left the lights on. Did I do that? No, I didn't do that. And no one else did either. So something happened. I'm in the process of diagnosing it right now. But I had an absolutely dead battery. And so what did I do? I put on a battery charger, a 6-amp battery charger overnight, coupled with a desulfator. And I got another type of desulfator, and this one is about 10 times as effective as the little ones I had. And this is blasting away the sulfate on the plates, and it looks like the battery is going to be just perfect by the time this broadcast is over, and then I get a chance to repair this old Mercedes. But I want to share one thing with you before we get started with Guineith, and that is that I am noticing that batteries are overflowing with electrolyte. It's a new phenomenon. I've seen it before, but nothing like this. So is anyone else having the same problem where the electrolyte comes out of the fill caps and corrodes the connections, the battery terminals? Am I the only one having this problem, or are others having it as well? Is something going on with battery technology? Is something going on with the atmospheric pressure? What is it? I don't know at this point, but I wanted to share that with you. Patrick is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. Guineith Isaacs is live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith. Well, is it just me, or is Guineith with us?
The call got dropped, but I'm going to call her again. Okay. So Patrick is going to reconnect with Guineith, and let me tell you what we've got on schedule for today. We're going to be talking more about. We're going to be talking about female head of households. What happens? And it's happening more and more and more. Husbands are passing away. There's divorces. And the woman of the family is becoming the head of households. So we're going to talk about what that's like and preparing. What it's like being we'll call it a prepper. That's the word that's being used, and has been for a long time. I'm not crazy about that word. But anyway, preparing and being a head of household. Now, yesterday we talked, and I thought it was our best broadcast ever if you take out health. You say, well, we're not going to include health in broadcast, but other than that, it was, in my opinion, the best broadcast we ever did with Miles. And that was about cryptocurrencies and how cryptocurrencies are starting to really
take foothold. It's really important. And then Thursday, we're going to be talking about, Miles is going to be with us tomorrow, Wednesday. More about cryptocurrencies, more about the fundamentals and how they work. Thursday, Ricky Rocket, physics. And then Friday, Guineith is going to be with us again, and we're going to be talking about Bitcoin mining, how to do it. Patrick, do we have Guineith?
Yes, you do.
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, Guineith.
Hello, how are you? We just had a really bad line.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's a lot better now. There was a lot of static on that line, and it finally just dropped out.
Okay. Yep. Guineith is live in Australia, class. And Guineith, I understand that you and Rich Shealy will be switching days, so you're going to be on Mondays starting next week.
That's right.
And Rich Shealy is moving to Tuesdays. And thank you so much for that. That was at the request of Rich Shealy. Guineith accommodated that. So thank you. Guineith, yesterday we talked about cryptocurrencies with Miles, and then tomorrow we're going to do it again. And then my understanding is Friday you're going to be with us, and we're going to be talking about Bitcoin mining and more cryptocurrencies. Is that right? That's right, yep. And just about where they're going in the future and the implications of it. And there's things that are going to happen over the next decade or so that are more or less baked in the cake. And but we'll talk about that more on Friday. Yeah. Yep. And just as a side note, it seems to me that you can either get on board or get run over by these cryptocurrencies. That's about the sum of it. And I heard Miles saying that yesterday when I was listening to the archive on the Ron Gibson channel, which is how I usually listen to your show, and I couldn't agree with him more. Basically, his analysis was pretty well spot on. But there were things that I knew about that were coming down the pipe in the next few years that he didn't mention, that he didn't know about, and that I think are actually worthwhile saying. Yep. Great. Well, that'll be Friday. So Guineith and I will be on Friday getting more into the specifics of the cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin mining. And class, I hope that you pay attention. I actually literally called a family meeting right after the broadcast for dinner, and I mentioned that this is where we're headed, and we can either get on board or get run over by it. So that's how important I think it is. So Guineith, today you're going to talk about being the female head of a household, and I think it's happening. Well, I don't think. I know it's happening more and more. Your husband Archie died when your youngest son or your younger son was 3 months old. That was a pretty tough spot you were in. And that was horrible. Then your father died 6 weeks before that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then 6 weeks before that, I almost died in childbirth. Because I had a postpartum hemorrhage. And as far as anyone can work out, they put a suction cup on the baby's head to try and get him out. They had me lying flat on my back on the bed, which biologically is the worst position to try and give birth in. I was hooked up with so many wires. It was just absolutely amazing. And, that's absolutely not the way to have a woman giving birth. Okay? And it turned out that my boy, he had wide shoulders, and because they wouldn't let me get up and move around, as nature would have me, and as would have been the best thing for me to do, his shoulders got stuck in the birth canal, and that's why they had to get the suction cup, and they put it on the top of his head. It looks something like a toilet plunger, okay? Looks exactly like a toilet plunger. They put that on top of the baby's head, and they basically pull. Now, the obstetrician did another stuff up, and that it was actually a woman, but it was a woman with blue hair. If you get an obstetrician that's got a blue hair,
ask for another obstetrician, please. Because, you know, I got one with blue hair, and she had some really interesting opinions of how a woman ought to give birth. And she should have known better. She put the suction cup directly on my son's fontanelle, and he had a bruise on his fontanelle, and it's probably led to him having about a 10% drop in his IQ. And, you know, he can live with it because it means instead of having an IQ of about 145, he's now got an IQ of about 135. So I think he'll be okay. But
Guineith, I've seen this up close. I've seen the suction cup up close. I've seen it being used, and it does bruise the top of the head, and it also can cause the baby whose skull is malleable, if you will, they become cone heads, and then it gradually resolves. But it's true. Yeah,
and to put it directly on the fontanelle is just incompetent, in my humble opinion. You know, they can put it slightly forward or slightly back, and it would still do the same job. But to have it directly on the fontanelle, and under the fontanelle, that's the soft spot in the middle of the baby's head. Directly underneath the fontanelle is the brain. So if you have a bruise there, you've got a bruise on the brain. You know, if you've got a skull, and you've got a bruise which is on top of the skull tissue, okay, it's not going to bruise the brain. It's just going to be a bruise under the skin, okay. But like I said, it's fortunate that our family does have a very, very high intelligence. I reckon my IQ would be around about 125. And when I do IQ tests, that's what it comes out at. My other son has an IQ of about 145, and the younger one has about 135.
Well, that's great. That is fabulous. And I'll bet they're all independent thinkers, just like their mom.
They absolutely are.
Guineith and I will be right back. So, Guineith, you are one of the strongest people I know, and you live out in the middle of nowhere in Australia. You're off the grid. You don't have a lot of the luxuries that many people consume, and you do many things the hard way. And I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that what you do is very difficult. Your gardening is, you do it with shovels and picks and rakes and hand tools, and you farm that way, and you drive fence posts in by hand. And so you have really adopted this very difficult life, but absolutely it's sustainable. And whereas if the electricity quits for most people, they're absolutely positively toast. They're not going to survive. And if the electricity quits, you won't even know it. Except maybe
but something, if the world outside ended tomorrow, God forbid that should happen, probably the first thing I would know about it is, when my neighbour and I went out and, went into town and none of the shops were open.
Right.
And then we would, have a look around and say, oh, well, there's not much point in doing anything here, is there? Then we'd get back in her car and we would go back home.
Right.
And then figure out what to do from there.
Yeah.
And, because my friend is diabetic, and, she's going to have more problems if there's a systemic collapse than what I will, because of her
have you discussed that with her?
What that she has.
Have you discussed that with her? What she needs to do? I mean, that's a tough row to hoe.
That's really, really tough. I think, I don't know what I would do. I would try and help her the best I could. She would have to, obviously change her diet, but she eats a mostly whole food diet anyway. And they produce a great deal of their own food over there anyway, so it's mostly whole food. It's mostly natural food. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with us. And the thing is that we're not alone here, okay? I call this the local hippie enclave. If you're going to go down anywhere, probably the best place to go down is a rural hippie enclave where everybody owns their own freehold blocks and everybody lives off the grid and everybody knows each other, and you're actually working in a community where people have relationships with their neighbours, which are good relationships. That's probably the perfect place to be in a systemic collapse.
All right, so let's talk about crime. What's crime like in your neck of the woods in this enclave? I'll bet it's zero.
Well, almost. There's only one person who would be inclined to harm other people locally, and they're not hippies. They're a big station owner. They own around about 500 acres, and they own it freehold. They're not going anywhere. They've been there for generations, and they think we're a bunch of weirdos, basically. But if there's any problems, anyone who's likely to create any difficulties in the community, it's the ranch owner up the back, rather than the hippies. The hippies are not going to cause anyone any problems because they all believe in karma.
Sure.
Yep.
Do you have problems with hunters killing animals from illegally, like from the road, just shooting animals on your farm and other farms from the road?
Not really, because it's actually a paved road. It's a road that's not a huge major through road, but it is actually a route for the local police cars, which means that people are not inclined to just stop on the roadside and start plinking.
Yeah.
But
that's what they're doing in our neck of the woods.
The relative on the other side. Okay, we'll get back to this after the break.
Yep. Guineith Isaacs is with us. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs, you're going to tell us about being thrust into being a female head of household. You say it was not comfortable, not enjoyable, not safe, and but if you have to take the reins, if you're thrust into such circumstances, you're going to have to survive and prosper in this world, and you've done that. But it was not comfortable, safe, and many times not enjoyable, right?
That's right. The biggest problem was a short time after, my husband died, the local, I call them the child snatchers, okay, decided that we were a target for them. And to cut a very long story short, we were forced to flee for our lives from them. And, once you get on these people's radar, they never really forget about you. Okay? And, but I still have my boys with me, and they are now 14 and 16. And, that they have never really succeeded in, really permanently getting their hands on them, It has been horrible, though. At one time, they did take them, and I took them back, and the report I got from one of my children was that they were basically put in a cage, and that one of the policemen had he didn't know the word. He said electricity on a pole. Okay. And that he was using that to basically frighten the children. And I think that it's very, very interesting that reports have come out about basically pedophile cartels using child protection to put children in cages and use various electric devices to shock, torture, and frighten them. And when that came out in the press, my mind went back to what my son had said all those years ago. And he couldn't talk well, but he could talk well enough to make himself understood. He was 3 years old at the time. Okay. And, they kidnapped them, and I responded by taking them back and getting the dickens out of there. And given that they were, that my son said that they had shut him into a cage and that they had, quote, electricity on a pole or on a stick. Electricity on a stick.
Dr. Shealy and I call that lightning on a stick.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So it was either a taser on a pole or some type of cattle prod. That's disgusting. And,
I often think about what my reaction would be if that would happen to a member of our family.
I was so angry.
That's for starters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, there was nothing I could do at that time except to get as far away from these people as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think you mentioned something about how they're unlikely to forget. They just want to keep pursuing these children. And I think that they need to understand that we don't forget either.
We're not going to give our children to them.
That's right. And not only are we not going to do that.
We love our children. They are a pedophile cartel, nothing more and nothing less, and we are not giving our children to them. And if there's anybody out there in a similar situation, I would say do not ever, ever, ever let these people have your kids. If you can get them out of that situation, then you'd better do that, because it's your kid's life and your kid's future at stake.
Guineith, here's another component of this. For some strange reason, we have entrusted the public training camp to protect and educate our children. And day by day, we're finding out that principals, teachers aides, substitute teachers, bus drivers are abusing our children. They're having their way with them. They're enticing them into sexual contact, sexual acts, and then they threaten them. And we're seeing this more, and even the police, especially the police.
Especially the police.
Especially the police. And we're finding out that this has happened. Congress, senators, it's politicians of all ilk. It's happening in lots of government-run offices and operations. And our children seem to be prey to this. And we cannot let this happen. And I'm trying to figure out just what Vinny's response would be if a politician tried this with his daughter. I guess I shouldn't say it on the air, what my response would be. But I have a feeling it would be deliberate. I have a feeling that I would be quite angry. And I have a feeling that I would make the score even. Can't say for sure. Not on the radio.
Yeah, no.
But, anger would be just a small component of it. Who do these thugs think they are? Abusing small children. abusing defenseless children.
Yeah. And when this series of events happened, one of my youngest son by this time was about 12 months old, and my oldest son was around about 3. So, that's absolutely disgusting. And I hate to think what would have happened to those boys if I had just decided to sit back on my laurels, cry, and decide there was nothing I could do about anything. No, I decided that these people had made war against my family and that I was not just going to sit back and take it. And so I didn't harm them, but I did take my children back. And I got out of there. And they responded by, the next thing I hear is that my house has been smashed up. I'd just had a demountable building put onto the land, and, the building project had not been finished, but every single window in the house was smashed. My wood fire, which had recently been installed, was gone, and my compost toilet, which had once again recently been installed, was gone. And the solar panels were gone. And, these people, and as far as I'm concerned, that was the Queensland police who did that. Nobody else would have had a reason to do that. And
let me see if I understand.
I also owned a 26-foot yacht, and I was living on basically on almost half an acre of land on a subtropical island, about 30 minutes over the water from the Gold Coast in Queensland. And my yacht had been sunk in a shipping lane. Nice people, aren't they?
Let me see if I've got this right. So these government parasites could then come to you and say, you know what, this really is not a good environment for children. First of all, your house has no windows. Second of all, you don't have a heating system. Third, you don't have a toilet. Okay.
That's after I'd fled for my life from them,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm
laughing,
said,
but I'm laughing at the banality and these people actually thought they would destroy me this way. You know what I mean? It only made me stronger.
Guineith, let me share something that's tangentially germane to the subject. You talked about making war. They made war on you, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned that Citibank took over a credit card. Used to be called the AT&T Universal Credit Card. We've had it for decades. Always paid our bill in full, no interest. We always pay our bill in full. By the way, class, if you pay your credit card bill in full every month, there's a special term that the credit card companies use to describe you. It's exactly the opposite of what you would think. They would call you a deadbeat. You're a deadbeat if you pay your credit card bill in full every month because they don't make any money on you. Okay? Now, here's what happened. We've been paying our credit card bill for month after month after month for decades, always on time. Last Christmas, during the Christmas rush, the mail was delayed. We paid it in full. And because they didn't receive it on the appropriate day, they received it a couple days later, they charged us $25. I then paid the next bill in full, stating that I would not pay the $25. I would not pay the late fee. And I explained why. It wasn't our fault. We didn't do it. Blame the U.S. Postal Service. The fines and penalties and fees hit $300 on this one credit card on a $25 late fee. $300. I'll tell you what happened and what I did. We're talking about making war. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and I'm off on a little bit of a tangent, and there's a reason why I'm doing this at this point, class. It ties into the conversation. Guineith mentioned that they made war on her and her family. Well, Citibank made war on me and my family by threatening to damage our credit rating. And what does that do? Well, that affects the insurance rates that you pay for your automobile and homeowners and so forth. Guineith, I think we've got something going on with your connection. Oh, it's settling down.
I think that there's a lot of static on this line.
Yeah. Patrick, do you want to reconnect while I
get the people to give me a call back?
All right, we're gonna disconnect and reconnect, Guineith. And while we're doing that,
hear you.
Okay, we're gonna disconnect and reconnect. Okay, so class, while Patrick, our engineer, is doing that, I'll tell you the rest of the story. So, Citibank bought the portfolio of Universal, the Universal credit card that AT&T initially offered decades ago. We loved that particular credit card. It was just wonderful. Well, Citibank acquired it, and they changed policies, and one of our payments arrived late due to delays in the mail. Not us, but delays in the U.S. Postal Service. They charged us a $25 late fee. And I responded when I saw that late fee. Mrs. Finelli said, okay, here's the bill and here's what they're doing. I said, well, we're going to pay the balance in full, but not the late fee. So we subtracted out that $25 late fee, which I thought was extraordinarily high. And I was against it in principle because it was not our fault. Called AT&T's, or I'm sorry, called Citibank, and they said, no, we can't help you. I thought, wow, it's unbelievable. After decades of being a customer, they wouldn't help us and say, let's waive that late fee. Okay. Well, it costs, I know how much it costs. It costs $45 to get a customer for a credit card. After all the mailings and the processing, each new credit card customer that a bank acquires costs them $45. So I figured for sure these bozos at Citibank wouldn't throw away a loyal customer for a $25 late fee. Now, they would. They did. And so we paid the bill as usual in full, statement amount in full, except for the $25. Well, they kept hammering us and calling us multiple times per day, harassing us over this $25, $50, $75, $100, $150, $200, $250, and it kept going on and on and on, up to about $300. And it was really getting to be a nuisance. And I decided that I absolutely positively despised Citibank because they were so miserable. Nothing like the AT&T Universal card that I remembered. These thugs took it over and they were just miserable. So I finally wrote a dispute letter disputing the charge because I called them and I got transferred to the Philippines, and no matter what I did, they could eliminate and remove all of the fees, but not the initial $25, which would generate more and more and more fees. So after hours of being on the phone, I finally got nowhere, so I wrote them a letter disputing the charge. Here's the letter I got back from Citibank. Dear Mr. Finelli, in response to your recent inquiry concerning your preferred MasterCard account, our records reflect that the balance on the above account is $0.00. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate or write our office. Sincerely, G. Goldberg, Vice President, Citibank. Then I get another letter. Next letter from Citibank. Dear Vincent Finelli, we requested the consumer reporting agencies delete the accounts from your credit report. Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Those are the three big credit reporting services. They made war, and we won. It wasn't fun.
You dug your heels in.
Dug our heels in, came out swinging, reported these parasites, these financial perverts on the air. I'm talking about Citibank. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Citibank. If you've got a Citibank card, I suggest you consider...
bad PR.
Yeah, if you've got a Citibank card, I suggest you consider doing what we did, closing the account. We'll be right back. Class, let me read something to you that Guineith sent me. It says, it doesn't matter what your circumstances are. If you are a single mom, you owe it to your children to take control of your life and start making lemonade out of the lemons that you've been given in your life. Even if you don't have children and live on your own, you owe it to yourself because no one else is going to look after you as well as you can look after yourself. Very well said, Guineith. It's absolutely true.
That's the truth of it, you know. And I did go through a time in my life of dating with a view to, establishing the male-female structure of the family again. And guess what I found? Surprise, surprise. That there was a strong resemblance between the general men out there in the community and public bathroom, okay?
Are you saying that they both smell?
Well, they're either taken or they're full of something.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, we have a couple boys, and one of our boys would like to meet the right person. He's never been married, and it's very, very difficult to find someone who was not damaged in some, or has baggage, or has had multiple sets of children with different men who have come and gone, and just left. And, it's really, really difficult.
It is.
So you just decided that there's no one who's going to look after your family, you and your children, better than you, and you just took control of the situation and went forward. And that's wonderful. But so many people would just throw up their hands and say, "I can't do it," and just melt down. That's what young people are doing more than I think they should, just giving up.
It is a temptation. Oh, believe me, there's been tears along the way. There's been rivers and rivers of tears along the way. But you know something, you're stronger than what you know you are. Every one of us is. Mm-hmm. And it's it's okay to have a cry, but you shouldn't get bogged down in the tears. And when my boys would see me just sort of sitting on a chair or curled up on the bed crying or whatever, I would say, "Don't worry, this is just a pressure release valve. I'm going to feel better soon." Mm-hmm. And I would have a good old cry, and then I would generally have a sleep, and then I would get up and I would deal with the problem. I would figure out some way. I would go and pray, ask God for help, and that is so important. You will not get through if you don't know how to ask God for help. You absolutely won't get through. And it may be as simple as saying, "God, help, please. I need you." And if you do that, it's, the funniest thing in the world for me to see is these atheists who have been screaming helplessly at the sky. That has been the most ridiculous thing for me to see. They're all atheists. None of them believe in God. And when things don't go their way, they have no other response other than to scream helplessly at the sky. Even for an issue which really doesn't matter, something that's actually going to end up being positive for them, which is President Trump getting elected. And they can't even see it.
I've heard the saying that there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole.
I tend to agree.
During war, when you're being shot at and shelled, and grenades are being thrown in lots of directions, and the howitzers are going off, and the planes are overhead, and you happen to be in a foxhole. Now, there's no such thing as an atheist. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And I've asked God for help as well.
Yeah.
And Guineith, when you're talking about having this cry, is this when you look out and you say, "Wow, there's not much hope to get out of this situation," and you just kind of have your cry at that moment, and then after that, at that moment, and then after that moment, you realize that you are being assisted with divine intervention, And there is a way out. There is something
That's
that you can
right.
do. And then that one thing builds on the next, and pretty soon you're out of the jam. Is that what happens?
That's right. Yep, that's about the sum of it. And there's a Bible verse, I'm not sure where it is, but it says, what does it say? Nothing has seized you except that which is common to man, but God is faithful. He won't let you be tempted or tested beyond what you can bear. And when you are tempted or tested, He will provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. Okay? And what that means, everything might look bleak, everything might look hopeless. But if instead of screaming helplessly at the sky, you actually just humble yourself and say, Jesus, I need you. God, Father, in Jesus' name, I need you. Help me, please. Then you will see a way out. You may never have prayed in your life, okay? But, there is a God in heaven. He does love you, and He certainly helps anybody who's humble enough to think, well, maybe this is not all an accident. Maybe we were actually put here. And like I say, the tests, every single one of them makes you stronger. And if you get somebody who has been through stuff in their life and come out the other side of it, they are the strongest people. And I heard Alex Jones saying that on his show today. And I was just sitting there nodding my head going, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is absolutely the truth. That what doesn't kill you really does make you stronger. So you need to take courage, you need to stand up for yourself, you need to stand up for your children, and you need to believe that there is help available.
What was one of the toughest jams, if you will, that you were in during the time that you were escaping with your children? What was one of the toughest times that you faced, and what did you do?
Well, basically, the children were with their, they had been kidnapped by Child Protection, and I really, I knew that I had to get them out of there. So on an access visit, I basically put them into the car and fled interstate, okay? That was a really hair-raising time, okay? If they could get a hold of me, okay, and if they could imprison me for doing that, then they probably would. But you see, they've lost the moral high ground, okay, for the fact that they put my children in a cage and that they got some sort of an electric sparky device on a pole, either a cattle prod or a taser on a pole. I'm not sure. They said light electricity on a pole, okay, and that they were scaring my children with this device. That's lost the moral high ground, The fact that they smashed up my house after I left, the fact that when I eventually did get to Western Australia, that the Western Australian police were colluding with the local pedophile cartel, and after many years, actually, that the Victoria police as well, and the WA police, and the Queensland police decided that they were going to all try and gang up on me. Okay, because of course I've mentioned before about how I've exposed multiple times on air about sex racketeering in the Victoria Police. And there's people in the Victoria Police whom I know people in Geraldton, Western Australia, and they know people in Queensland, and they're all talking to each other. Okay? But the thing is, they've lost the moral high ground. But in the meantime, it's been me, little David, facing this great Goliath, okay? And if you don't think that sometimes that's been terrifying just to hold my ground and just to say you're not doing it, you know, you've never been in that sort of situation. But I'm not backing down against this Goliath. And if they ever do me in, then it's going to go very, very badly for them indeed, because information that I know about them is going to be released whether I'm living or if I'm dead. And they know that, and I've advertised that on air as well, you know. And this information is not just held by one person. It's held by multiple people, and some of them I don't even know.
Guineith, and some of them have microphones. Guineith and I will be right back.
I've got a number of friends who are broadcasters.
You know, Guineith, as you tell us what happened with the police and your children, I'm pretty sure that some of our class, some who are new to the class, want to believe what you're saying. However, they're probably saying, wow, you know, the police are supposed to take care of us. I can't believe that the police would all gang up, not only, you know, the local police, but the county police, and then across the country, the police are all involved in just picking on Guineith and her children, and all they really want to do is help and make sure that the children are safe. However, what you really found out was the children were put in a cage, and they were threatened, and they were coerced, and they were, would you say, brainwashed into thinking that if they didn't cooperate, that harm would come to them? Isn't that what happened? Did we lose Guineith? Well, I'm here. Guineith, you still there? Patrick, are you there? Of course, the next question is, am I here? Well, I'm looking at the meters, and it looks just like I'm connected, and it's working fine. But we did lose Guineith. Patrick, are you there? Okay, do we lose her? Okay, all right. So we're going to reconnect with Guineith Isaacs, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what happened with trials and tribulations of having her children kidnapped by the authorities, all in the name of protecting the young children, all in the name of doing what many people would think is right. And I got a call here at the farmhouse a couple of years ago, and a man told me that they were coming to steal his children. And what could he do? No kidding. Seriously. He was being threatened by child protection. He was being threatened by the police. And he was doing everything he could to protect his children. And there's a man who goes by the name of Silent Night. Silent Night. He's been on the air with us. And he talks about children and protecting your children from the kidnappers. I'm talking about from the government. And what it's like to operate an underground railroad, very much like the underground railroad that was operated during the War of Northern Aggression here in the United States. Some people call it the Civil War. Guineith, are you with us? Not yet. Okay. Well, he wrote a book, and it's by Silent Night. It's not available at bookstores. You have to get it from him. And he talks about what you have to do. And it's a lot easier if you set up your connections in advance so that just before they come to kidnap your children, you have them shuttled off to the first stop on the Underground Railroad. And then from that stop, they're shuttled off to the next stop. And not all the stops know about the other stops. And because of that, it's impossible for the government team to find your children. Now, if they use cell phones, of course, it's a lot easier for them to find where your children are. They can find your children in a matter of a minute or two if they have cell phones. So if you want us to... Great. Guineith, I'm talking about the Underground Railroad that Silent Night wrote the book on, and how to shuttle your children off when the when the government is coming to steal them from you. And,
have
it
a
needs to be
network
set up in
up.
advance. Excuse me?
In advance. Everybody should do that. Because these people are absolutely, they're nothing more, nothing less than a pedophile cartel of the most brutal nature. And around about, I think in Australia, it's between 100,000 and 300,000 people vanish off the face of the earth in Australia every single year. And a large proportion of those are actually children.
Guineith, I'm sure that some of our class is saying, how can this be? How can this be? Well, you're here to tell us that it's absolutely true. So, Guineith, you are the head of household in your family.
Yep.
What advice do you have for those who are becoming heads of household who are female? What do you suggest?
Okay. My number one suggestion would be something my dad taught me a long, long time ago. I think I mentioned this the other week. The buck stops with you, and you need to stop passing it. Okay? You need to take responsibility, and you need to realize that if you don't build your own household up and make a future for yourself and your family, nobody else is going to do it for you. That includes if you don't own your own real estate, then you need to work towards actually owning your own real estate, okay? Because renting is just a horribly precarious way to live. And there are ways, even if you have very little money, that you can end up owning your own real estate. I'm thinking especially here, often you can get rent-to-buy agreements on land and sometimes on houses, okay? And preferably get a place out in the countryside, because in the coming years, and it's even starting to happen now, in many areas, towns are not good places to live. Even small country towns are becoming increasingly problematic with regards to crime rates. Okay? There's a much, much lower rate of crime. Like I said, around here, there's basically no crime except for one big station owner up the back and a relative of his, that's a rancher, that's what we call them in this country, and a rancher who lives across the road. But even they mostly now don't bother us because we don't bother them, okay? And if you don't reciprocate when you're provoked, in the countryside, probably people are more likely to just leave you alone and let you be, because they're going to realize that, you know, you can't be goaded into reacting. That's how country people think. Okay, they think different to city people. Okay, but you have to take control of your life. You have to get yourself established with real estate, okay? Because your kids are going to have, even after they've grown up and left home, they're going to need somewhere to come back to if they have to. And otherwise, you're just going to have a perpetually precarious existence. And no family needs that. And, you know, if you've got land, then you can work towards getting buildings on it. You can, even demountable buildings, even you get some shipping containers now that are done out like houses, and you can live in them. You can set up, and you could probably, I know this sounds like a lot of money, but really it's not. If you save for it, you can get these shipping containers for between $2,000 and $5,000 delivered, and you could fit them out yourself and just camp in them until you do, and keep a low profile. You know, you can do it. It sounds like a lot of money, but if you put away $20 each week, okay, that means that in 10 weeks you've got $200. That means in 100 weeks, which is just over, just under 2 years, you've got your $2,000. Okay, that's $20 a week. And who cannot, if you can't afford to put away $20 a week, you really are in a bad situation, and you better think of some way to earn more money, first of all. But like I say, once you've got land, you can put in your own water supply. You can do the research on how to do that. And you can grow vegetables.
Yes. As you say this, I'm so frustrated, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
Just down the road from us, I found 640 acres. Okay, it's one square mile, 1 mile by a mile. Okay, and it was already divided up into 2, 5, 10, 20 acre parcels. One way in, one way out. It had places for ponds. It had trees. It was absolute roads. It was magnificent. It is magnificent. And I could get that and put the deal together and sell acreage for about $1,500 an acre. So that 2 acres that you're talking about, I could have sold $3,000. Okay, and we would have restrictions as to what you could do with it. So it wouldn't turn into a mess. But I'm looking right now on the internet at shipping container houses. Okay, class, you can go there. Just go to your favorite search engine, type in shipping container houses, click on images. Some of these shipping containers, they cut the sides out, they put windows in, doors. They really look great. They paint them gray or some nice color. Some of them have they fabricated peak roofs, sloping roofs. They really turned out nice. And they're really strong. They're not going to blow away in a storm. And can you imagine? So for $2,000 for the box, add a couple $1,000 more for doors and windows. Now you've got $4,000 in the box. It's about 8 by 8 feet high by 40 feet long. Now you've got a house for $4,000. Of course, you'd want to insulate it and put in plumbing and heating and wiring and those kind of things. But for very little money and a couple acres for $3,000, heck, you're on your way. And for less than $10,000, you got a place you can call home. Literally.
That's right. And your children forever.
Yeah. So what happened? Why am I so frustrated? I could only find 5 or 6 people who were just remotely interested in this. That's it. 5 or 6 people. And so I gave up. After months of talking about it on the air, there were so few people interested, I couldn't pull it off by myself. I couldn't buy, $1 million worth of property by myself and start selling it. I just couldn't do it. So I gave up on that. So what happened? The property has been logged. That means that it has been clear-cut. It looks like a moonscape now. Yeah, it's destroyed. Yep. So that's over.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, this would be great. We'd have a village center.
A real
we
community.
Could have we could have a big meeting room where we could all get together. We could use it for, worship services if we wanted to on the weekend, on Sunday, for example. We could use it for, the village meetings. Other times. We could use it for village planning, village recreation, the village school. We could have our own wells, our own creeks, our own ponds, our own fishing ponds, our own solar power generation. We could defend it. We could grow gardens. We could have a village garden, village classes.
Yep.
And it all fell
apart.
apart.
It's very hard to get people interested.
Wow.
And that's why I say, if you're going to do this, you've got to do it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
You can maybe get help from other people, and I have had help from other people along the way, people that God has put across my path. In particular, a second cousin of mine at one time gave me a rent-to-buy mortgage so that I could buy my first farm, you know. And I was then able to sell that farm for a profit, pay off the mortgage, and buy a suburban house. And that went disastrously because there were a pair of pedophiles lived around the corner who decided they were going to stalk my sons, and I had to sell the place and get out of there. But I was able to sell that place, and I was able to buy the farm that I'm on now. You know, you've got to, and so, you know, but you've got to take responsibility for your own life and for your own family to realize that the buck stops with you. And if you get help from somebody else outside, that's all well and good. If you incur a debt, pay it off, okay? If it's a legitimate debt that you have actually agreed to. I paid off that mortgage to my second cousin, okay? And she got the money back that she had loaned me. But yeah, you've got to realize that no one else is going to do it for you. That you've got to make your own plans for your own life. And if I can motivate just one person out there in the class to actually stop whinging, moaning, and complaining, and get off their backside and start making some plans for their family's prosperous future, I think I would do a little dance on the inside of me. I would be so happy. Because I want everybody to prosper.
That's what this broadcast is about. It's about sharing our experiences, our knowledge, our thoughts, our opinions. And we don't make any money at this. You know, class, there's nobody making any money. Nobody gets paid. We're all a bunch of volunteers. It's a loose organization. You might say we do this on a handshake with the instructors, but there's not even a handshake. It's just we feel strongly about what we say, and we're willing to share it. And Guineith right now is up in the middle of the night in Australia. She could be sleeping, but she's sharing her knowledge with you.
Yeah. Is this the end of the broadcast, or do we have another segment?
No, we've got one more segment.
Okay, lovely.
And, class, if you'd like to get in touch with Guineith, her Facebook page is right at usaprepares.com under the Instructors tab. usaprepares.com. Click on the Instructors tab. It'll take you right to her website or her Facebook page. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Guineith, so you have been the head of the household, protecting your family, providing for your family. How tough is it?
Sometimes it is really, really tough. Okay. I would say probably the hardest thing has been standing up against the various pedophile cartels when you're a single parent and basically, not letting them have your children has been by far the toughest thing.
Are you saying it's because you're outnumbered and outgunned?
Well, maybe it seems that way on the physical level.
That's what I mean.
What I keep reminding myself is these people have absolutely lost the moral high ground. Mm-hmm. And it's now the worst-kept secret ever that they're nothing but a stinking pedophile cartel, and a satanic one at that. They're that deep in satanic ritual abuse, okay, that there's been, hundreds of thousands of children have just disappeared off the face of the earth after going into state care. And the ones that come out of state care, just about all, either drug addicts or criminals or mentally ill. That the state is the worst parent ever. And I would say that that knowledge has absolutely motivated me to be the best parent under the, in the circumstances that I could possibly be, to provide for my family, to try and walk as wisely as I can in being a mum to my boys, to give them the best hope for a future that I can possibly give them, and a big part of that is, that one day they're going to get this land, and, because I'm mortal, one day I will die, and this land will still be here. The other battle that I've fought is over the fraudulent corporate municipality trying to extort money out of me in the form of fraudulent property taxes, and I investigated that and found out that it was nothing but an extortion racket, and that basically all property taxes are nothing but an extortion racket, and you don't have to consent to contract with your local municipality if you don't want to, because just about guaranteed they're a corporation, and if they're a corporation, they're not really a government, and they can't raise taxes if they're a corporation.
You challenged them and you won that battle, right?
Well, they've lost already, but it's like that point in a chess game where that within just a few moves that you're going to have the checkmate.
Yes.
There's really nowhere they can go, okay? And there's probably still one or two moves to be played, but there's nothing more that they can do to win this chess game. That there's, all that they can do is engage in more fraud, and that's not going to win their day in court. Okay, because if you point out that it's fraud, and you get some judge comes up to you and says, "Well, what do you have to say about that?" And you say, "Well, it's fraud. They're a corporation. They've got no right to raise taxes." And I don't consent to contract with this court anyway. I require that you recuse yourself because you're in cahoots with them. And if you know the law, if you educate yourself about the law, you're going to be in a better position to defend yourself and to defend your family. So that's another thing I encourage people to do. I think we're at the end of the broadcast, aren't we?
Yeah, Guineith Isaacs, you are one of the strongest women I know.